All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to weekly webinar number 15 with me, your host, Michael Floyd. I am your mentor and your mentee. You learn as much from me as I hope to learn from you. Now, like I said before, meeting with me to fill out the introduction forms. I still need the ones who have not filled out the introduction forms to fill out the introduction forms. Of course, as you know, as data scientists, you can imagine it being very, very necessary to get a full and accurate data set. So you have to make impute data or possibly delete people from what you were trying to sample. So this could be very, very important in how they help students along in the future, how they could possibly help you in the present. Um, now, you still have some that have not completed the first project and still do not keep in contact with me. I'm hoping you're hearing this and can come in contact and hopefully finish the first project. Many of you haven't completed the second one yet. I'm hoping you get the ball rolling as soon as possible. And for the ones on the third project, if you need any help, please let me know on the third project as well. And like I say, every webinar, the money is already spent. So whether you fully put in the work or not, then that's when you realize how well you spent your time and your money, and this can have great implications on you for the future as well. And like I say, also every time you spend a little time on the lessons or the project, just write and select what you were doing, what you have problems with. This can help somebody else in the future, or see if you're actually going through the same things, just talking about it in more of a team cohesive unit. And I'll remind you guys of the case of the three students. Student A so far, lives with his parents and at home. None of us are student A. We are all student B or C. We all have jobs. You all have children. I don't have children. But hopefully you inconvenience everybody around you in order to get the lessons done, as opposed to keeping up with schedules, being on time, inconvenience those around you. They're not that important. So now, what this webinar is on is SQL and NoSQL with Amazon Web Services. I'm going to show you how to set up databases in both SQL and NoSQL. And also, we're going to talk about the difference between them and possibly why to use SQL and NoSQL as opposed to just using Python, pandas, when you should use SQL, when you should use Python, all of these things. And this is going to be a long one. Hopefully, I get everything done. So let me get straight to the point. I'm going to begin sharing my screen. Give me 1 second. Okay. So, couple of articles I thought were very great in telling what I want to tell. Okay, SQL versus NoSQL databases, difference explained, and also gives you examples. Okay, but mostly we're going to look at the differences right here. So we have SQL, which stand for structured query language, and NoSQL, which is non-structured query language, is what they stand for. But pretty much SQL is called relational databases or relational database management, because what you're doing is you are managing and looking through databases that are very highly structured. So that way, to look up information, combine information, group, get the necessary details that may be in or amongst multiple different rows in the database or columns in the database. Looking across these things, as far as the relationships go within the data set, SQL is definitely better for. Well, NoSQL, doesn't have as big of a structure, more of key value pairs, and the data inside NoSQL is similar to what you would kind of feel you would get from a JSON or something similar to that. So, more difficult and to compare relationships, although you can, but of course it's not as easy and as quick and efficient as what you would see as far as a relational database management. You see right here, SQL databases are vertically scalable, and I believe they give you an example of that. So in order to make, let's say, your database on SQL run faster, increasing the horsepower of the hardware. So that means your CPU size, maybe more RAM, maybe more gigs for your RAM, or more gigs for your hard drive. Increase the speed memory. And NoSQL, you would increase the number of cores or CPUs that so you increase the pool of resources, not just the resource for the NoSQL. Okay, and here, define and manipulate data, structured. I said that already. All this, and just give you examples of SQL databases and NoSQL databases. Complex queries, like I was saying before, great for complex queries because it's so structured. NoSQL not really great for complex queries. And, simple queries like the CRUD, what they call create, read, update, delete. But more complex, like joining and grouping by. And, there's much more complex things you can do. And talks about hierarchical data, not best fit SQL. So it gives you a couple of different differences between them, SQL and NoSQL. And here's a great article I found on when to use SQL or NoSQL for that matter. Although I don't give benchmarks for NoSQL, but this is when to use SQL versus pandas, right? Which one is faster, and so for different operations. And basically, they did a couple of experiments. You see, you have some tests. For the simple operations like join, group by, filter, sort. You see SQL outperforms pandas. For other operations, pandas outperform SQL. SQL has ways where you can do analytics with SQL as well, but as you can imagine, doing those such analytics are a lot better with analytical tools and languages such as Python, which was made for those tasks. So pandas, as you see, one, I'm not sure what this is actually for. As far as pandas is faster in this, I'm not sure exactly what it's faster in, but yeah. So it's an article about when to use pandas, when to use SQL. So pretty much on the server side, try to decrease the amount of data that's going to be passing through from server to client. So all the sorting, the selecting, remove all the data that's not necessary for you. Send it off to Python or R, and then you do your analytics or whatever tasks you want to do to perform the data. So that's pretty much what the article is telling you what the best solution to be is. This is another article on SQL and pandas, when, where, how to use these tools. Okay. So, basically because these languages evolve to do everything that a typical user will want to do. As you can imagine, pandas and SQL have evolved to do many of these same tasks. But in terms of efficiency, which comes from the other article, you can then determine which one to use in which scenario and circumstance. Here's another one, the difference between SQL and Python. I won't keep talking about that, but I will post these articles um, on Slack. Yeah, Slack. So, okay. So now what I want to do is I want to show you how to create a SQL create a SQL database and a NoSQL database. In Amazon, it's called RDS, and NoSQL is, well, I'm going to be using DynamoDB. There's several things you could use for AWS. Be using RDS and DynamoDB. The first thing I'm going to do is create a Lambda function. So create a function. You know what? While that is loading, what I'm also going to do is pull up DynamoDB. I tried to right click on it. Pull up DynamoDB. Oh. Right click button is not working. Okay, so the function name, I'm going to name the function Webinar 15. Just to make everything simple, I'm going to name everything Webinar 15. What we're going to be using to run this is Python 3.6, and choose to create an execution role. So I'm going to be creating a role with actually, I'm going to create a role with basic Amazon permissions, Lambda permissions. So this role is going to be called webinar whatever, create function. Okay. It's taking a while. So AWS.amazon.com. IAM, access management. So, because this is maybe taking a long time trying to do multiple things at once. So that function is creating, and while that's creating, what we're going to do is we're going to mess around with the role. Let me see. This is already created. It's really slow updating at this point. So is the IAM. Okay. The Lambda function has been successfully created. Okay. And the code for the, so up here, you have layers for the Lambda function. And if something happens such that maybe a call from an API or something's put into a storage place like S3, you can trigger Lambda, or even a CloudWatch event. You could trigger Lambda to act on those instances, but none of those will happen during this time. But Lambda is very versatile, and you can upload a. I'm going to upload a zip file, and show you what this zip file contains. This zip file contains RDS config, which is going to be the relational database configurations that we're going to have. We're going to change the endpoint name, but we're going to keep the username and password and database name as webinar 15. We can set those ourselves. And our Lambda function .py. And all this is going to be doing is going to be changing the databases and selecting things from the databases when we use the RDS and when we use DynamoDB. So import statements, we're going to connect with PyMySQL to the RDS. We're also going to connect to DynamoDB. And for Lambda, it's going to be calling the Lambda handler as the function. And we're going to be testing it. And through those tests, we're going to make sure that everything is correct. So this is showing you what this is. And so what I'm going to be doing is going to upload. Go to webinar 15. Webinar 15. Save. Now, once this saves, you're going to see in line, everything in line that we can fix and change. Now we have IAM. So the role we just created, which was webinar 15 right here, we need to change this role. So we don't have, so roles are very specific in what they can or cannot do. We have to grant them permissions to do things we want them to do. So what we want this role to do is you want it to be able to write to RDS, write to DynamoDB, and we're going to be using a virtual private cloud in order to make sure everything is secure within the cloud. So, okay. So the first policy we want is RDS, full access. And you don't have to grant full access. So when you do it, you can create policies of your own that tailor to your own. For example, during some of the things I've had to do, what I've done is, for example, when something's getting called into an S3 bucket, I've only invoked the Lambda function for a specific part in that bucket and invoked it in places for other parts as well. So DynamoDB, full access. Okay, and we also want the virtual private cloud. We want to grant full access. And from something else we need for RDS, we need to grant the access for all the data for RDS as well. So we have RDS and data full access as well. Okay, so we're going to attach these policies. While these policies are being attached, while the Lambda function is loading and has finished loading, so you can see the Lambda function on here. What we have is, like I said before, the Python, the try, the except, when I call the MySQL, the DynamoDB, okay? And you have the, it's going to be calling Lambda handler. And that's what this says. What is handler? Lambda function is the name of the script, and Lambda handler is the name of the function it's going to be calling from this script. So that's how this is named, Lambda function dot Lambda handler. So if you change the name of the name, change just so you would know. In order to use Lambda with RDS, first we're going to configure RDS. So let's go to services and let's go to RDS. Awesome. So the fiber policies are attached right here. Okay, so job is done there. So let's, for here, so we have to waste time. We have two windows open. Let's go to DynamoDB. So we're going to be configuring DynamoDB as well. Just waiting. So we're going to create a database. AWS has many types of database you can create, including Amazon Aura, which actually scales up with respect to what you need. So uh, pretty cool. It manages itself. Just waiting. So yeah, Amazon Aura, but I only want to enable the free tier options. So you see AWS is not a free tier option. So we're going to be choosing MySQL and click next. Okay. General public license is all right for now. 5.77 version is okay for now. Micro instance storage type, 20 gigs is okay. It's free tier. Database instance identifier, like I say, will be webinar 15. The name will be webinar 15 as well. And the password will be webinar 15. And the password will be webinar 15. Okay. So we can click next. I'm not going to save the poorly designed password. In the virtual private cloud, we can select the default, or we can select what created this virtual private cloud for us. But I'm going to create a new virtual private cloud and create new DB subnet and public accessible. Sure, we can make it public accessible, although you'd want to, restrict your subnets for what's going in and what's going out. Availability, say East 2, and perhaps we should configure these security groups first. So I want to cancel this and configure these security groups first. Let's go to services and virtual private cloud. Although we could have just created the security groups and the subnets using the RDS, I also want to show you how to create them and name them all webinar 15 so there's no confusion. So we have my virtual private cloud. The internet is taking a long time currently. Possibly just using one might speed it up. So we have virtual private cloud. Okay, fantastic. So as you can see, I did this before just to make sure everything was great, but we already have a webinar 15 here. You know what? To make everything quicker, I'm not going to delete this and redo it. We have webinar 15, but if you wanted to create a virtual private cloud, you put the name, which we did webinar 15, the IPv4 CIDR blocks, which tells you exactly what you're looking for with any virtual private cloud to connect to. What I used was just 10.0.0.16. So what this means is that you have 32 bits in total with this, and 16 means the first 16, which means from these two zeros are what you can change in this virtual private cloud and be associated within it. So just going to cancel, not going to create anything. We have webinar 15. Let's look at these subnets that are maybe still there. Okay. So we already have two subnets, webinar 15A, webinar 15B, and internet gateway subnet. We need to create more subnets. Okay. So since we already have two webinars, we need to create more subnets for that. But we need to create subnets for our network address translators. So this is going to be translating the addresses from the internet to within our network. And the virtual private cloud we're using is webinar 15. And the availability zone, we have, let's say we use A for this one. We call that number 1. And the block, like I said before, so these first two digits must stay the same. So we have 10.0. And the next two, because we already used, because it goes by 16. So the first 16 bits, not the first 16 bits, the first 12 bits actually on here. Well, what we're going to be using is /20. And you subtract 32 from 20 and you get 12. So the first 12 bits. So this goes from 0 to 255. So this is 8 and this is 8 as well. So half the bits on here. And so 2 to the 4 is 16. So every 16 needs to change. We already have two gateways for 0 and 16. We can make this one 32, 0. Create. Talking about in a second. So you see here, we all have 10.0 right here. You see it starts 0, 16, 32. This is 112, which is far beyond it. But I just put that really far high. Create subnets and name tag. It's going to be NAT2, the virtual private cloud, webinar 15. Availability zone will be 2B. IPv4 CIDR block is was it 10.0. Since we use 32 at 16, that'll be 48.0, and we are doing 20 bits. So create. Subnet is created. Okay. Now what we need to do is set up our route tables and internet gateways and a NAT gateway. All this is needed in order to access DynamoDB. So route table. we already have the route tables. I'm not going to delete them, but if you see create route table, your name tag, like I named them L2N and L2I, which means Lambda to Internet Gateway and Lambda to NAT Gateway. So it's showing you how to do that. You name them however you want. In the VPC, I use Webinar 15, of course, the one we created. Going to cancel out of that. So we have these two. Now let's look at the routes for this one. Okay. So this one, going to the gateway, all destinations going to the NAT gateway, which I will show you is here. Okay, it's already created. I'm not going to recreate one. But if just showing you how to create one, if you were going to create one, you'd use the subnet that you would use the Internet Gateway subnet as the subnet. You would create your new EIP and select create a NAT gateway. We already did that, so I want to do that. And also for the Internet Gateway. Okay. Show you how to create an Internet Gateway. Your name tag is required. Cancel. Okay. And it's connected to the Webinar 15 virtual private cloud. So once you have the Internet Gateway, select on it, click on Actions, and you want to attach it to a virtual private cloud. Okay. So this is not new. It's already attached to a virtual private cloud. But if it wasn't, I could detach and attach it. But you just attach it to the Webinar 15 virtual private cloud, and yeah, everything will be fine. So now let's go back to the route table. So we did the L2N on the route table. We have the L2I. Look at the routes. It goes to the Internet Gateway, the one of I. So we are okay there. But now our subnets must go to the correct place. So you have this NAT subnet. Let's go to route table. And where do we want this to go? Edit route table association. The route table we want to do is to the NAT gateway, L2N. All right. Click on save, close. Do the same thing for the second one. Can't do more than one at once. Edit route table association. And to the N. Click on save. Look on here. This is L to N. We are good. This is L to N. We are good. And this is L to I already there. So we are good with this as well. Okay. So that's everything that's going to be within our virtual private cloud. Now let's go back and create the two databases. Going to create a database. Okay. It's loading. Going to be choosing MySQL. We're also going to be choosing the only enable for free tier. Go on next. Okay, everything here is good. We did before. Webinar 15. We're going to go on next. How doesn't the password match? Oh, this one did not stay webinar 15. Click on next. Okay, so we don't want the default. We want webinar 15 for the subnet group. I'm not sure. I'm only seeing the default subnet, but it should be. All right, so make this publicly accessible. And let's choose from existing security group, which is webinar 15. Availability zone, say 2B. I think Ohio is 2B. See, East Virginia A, Ohio B. Going to use 2B. Database name, it's webinar 15. The port, everything is all right. Okay, everything here is good. What you'd want, I'm not gonna do it. I guess I will. Of course, you'd want all these logs to go into CloudWatch. Makes for easier when you are seeing what went wrong. And also you want to, well, I'm going to not enable delete protection because I'm going to delete this as soon as we finish with so this cannot be publicly accessible. Okay. So I don't need to view the instance details. I can go to services, go to DynamoDB, and I'm now creating the DynamoDB database. This one is NoSQL. RDS was SQL. The DynamoDB is NoSQL. DynamoDB, because of lack of structure, takes a lot less as far as knowing how to create the table, and also a lot less as far as Amazon setting up everything for the DB instance. So table name, I wonder what that's going to be called. Primary key is user ID. You see, we can also change the string. You can add a sort key, so whenever the information is given back to you, it'll be sorted on this key. You can change the default settings. When you know how much you'll be needing as far as reading capacity and write capacity, you can provision it to not go above that, and that will be a lot less. Or you can use on demand, which if you do not know what your provisions are, then definitely using on demand is helpful as well. And on demand, of course, you don't have to scale up, in in case something happens as far as your app may be gaining a lot more hits and you having to scale. On demand is on demand, so it will be used. Encrypted, everything's good. Click on create. Okay. So the database is created that quickly. So now let's go to services and back to our Lambda function. Oh, yeah. Webinar 15. Before we get into the function code and running the function code, what I'm going to do is set the role. So you need to use an existing role. No, we want to use an existing role. And we're going to be using the webinar 15 role. It's already there. And the virtual private cloud, of course, we're going to be using webinar 15. And so now these subnets, we need the NAT1 and NAT2 that we used. Okay, that we created it with. Security groups, webinar 15. How did you guess? So, and here are the inbound outbound rules. So everything should be good on that end. Let's change the time. 3 seconds is always a very small amount of time. So 10, 11, okay. And okay. Everything looks good here. I believe there is an error. Yes. This is a 1S. This is password. So in DynamoDB and in SQL, we're going to be creating a table, and the table is going to be a users table, something that I created for a different database. I just had the code already there, so that's why we're using this. We're going to be creating a users table. Going to have information about the user, his ID, email, password, such things. And you can see in SQL, we have primary keys and the unique keys in SQL. And DynamoDB, you don't have to really specify what's going to be in the database. All you do is just make sure that you put in the user ID when you create. So you see put item, just make sure you put in the user ID. Everything else doesn't have to be the same at all, as long as you have the indexes. So in order to test our event, we need to configure a test event. And also, the reason why I uploaded it from a zip file and not copy and paste is because we're going to be using PyMySQL. In order to use different modules of Python, such as PyMySQL, what you need to do is you need to obtain these modules through, the pip install statements, and then from there, uh, place them in a folder with your code, and then upload them to AWS. This is a step-by-step example of how to do it with Docker. What I do with Docker is I, launch the Docker container, and from the container, I go to the virtual environment. I install whatever Python libraries I need, and after I install the Python libraries I need, I upload those Python libraries to Git, so I have them. And if anybody else does a basic search, they can most likely come up with what is on the profile, and they can have them as well. So, like Pillow, whatever libraries I need, Daytime, whatever libraries that I need, those would, I place them in Git, and also make sure when you are getting these libraries, you see what libraries are dependent, and also installing at the same time that these the main one is installing, because you need the dependencies as well as the main library. I'll place all these links later. So configure test event. Let's call this webinar 15. And the way Lambda provides data is through a dictionary. The dictionary is called event. And so make this DB, and forgot what the other category was called, but we're going to create webinar 15. And the query is the name of the category. So this is the information Lambda is getting from whatever is triggering the call. So, in my case, I've used APIs, I've used S3 uploading stuff in. So whatever is triggering this call being put in, it's going to use all that information as far as the event, and place that in an event dictionary. You can use the event dictionary. So, but I've made different parameters in the event dictionary myself. So query, the parameters I made uh, using the event user ID, query, and type. Okay. Query, user ID. So for query, we're going to call create. We need to create it first. User ID don't need right now, but that's going to be A. I believe user I is capitalized. It's A. Save. All right. So what I did is, if the event type is SQL, then it's going to be performing this, but we are not looking at if it's SQL. Our event type in our case is DB for DynamoDB, so else. And now if the event query is select, which is not, the event query parameter is create. So we're going to be creating entries to be putting into the DynamoDB table. Okay. If you just click save, it's going to save everything in the Lambda function, everything in the test we're going to be testing. Click on save. It's a little while, and now click on test. could not connect to my SQL instance. So the RDS might not be fully configured yet. I'm going to comment that out and save the function. Oh, change the endpoint, which we will do later. But so we save the function, going to click save. So aws.amazon.com. Okay, I don't see. So while this is saving, so we need to change the endpoint to the endpoint. So let's go to services. Jump to RDS. Fantastic. So that is saved. What I'm going to do is now test it. It says the resource is not found. Table 1. Oh, I have the table as users. The table is not users, right? The table is webinar 15. Whoops. So save this. Let's click save. All right. And now let's click test. Yes. So I just wrote a little print statement to make sure everything is okay. So everything is completed. So it should be fine right now. So let's actually, before we change everything, let's configure the test and do select. So this is going to be doing is going to be selecting the user ID A and displaying all the information that we passed on to the user ID A when we just created dummy information for it. So we have select, we click on test, and right there is all the information from the user. Right? See, it took 35 milliseconds with very quick time. Use only 32 gigs, so you have 128 available for memory. And here's all the information. And this is in a JSON, so it could be, it could be returned back to the API, and whatever you're getting, maybe you're creating a simple platform, analytical platform, and you can call APIs and get information from the API in this fashion, and it's going to all return in JSON format, which is fantastic for whatever you want to possibly do. What we're actually looking up now is the RDS. So what we did not get from RDS is we did not get the endpoint. It was not finished loading anyway, so it would have taken time to obtain the endpoint. Let's go to databases. So we have 1 out of 40 running right now. We can run up to 40. Wow. We can apparently run up to 40. We have this one, Webinar 15. I can click on it, and it'll tell me all the information. Loading. There's our endpoint. Go back to the Lambda function, RDS config. Paste. All right, Control S, save that, save this. We also have to change test. So now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be accessing the SQL and creating a SQL table within the database Webinar 15. And then from that table, we are going to select the user A, the same user. So didn't get too crazy with what I'm trying to show you, just showing you that it is all up and you can access it from Lambda and return it as a JSON and do whatever you want to do with it. So query is create, save. Oh, wait. Also, the type has to change, right? So the type is SQL now. Let's click save. Go to the Lambda function. Everything looks all right. Now let's click test. Con is not defined. Oh, yeah. I commented all this out. So I have to uncomment this out. Save it. I'll snooze that. Save it. We're out of time, so I think I was a couple of minutes late, which is good. So we have maybe 1 or so minutes. Save and test. Yes. So in this one, the response, we created response that sent all users into this JSON. So this is going to, I think it's 4 users. You have the information for all 4 users. Some of it is null, didn't put it in, but yeah. So here's the information from all 4 users in this JSON. See, one ends right here. And now you have user B with user ID B. So all I have to do is just go to configure and select, save, test. All right. Now we just selected user A. We just have 1 user. Okay, so RDS DB, both there. Um, what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete everything that I just done. So we don't have time in this webinar to show you me deleting everything, the VPNs, the Lambda function, the RDS, the DynamoDB. I don't actually think the functions or the virtual private networks would even take up any cost without being in use. So um, you don't have to delete them, but I delete everything I do not need to be just in case. That is it. If anybody has any questions within these next 5 minutes, let me know. I will be finished strong. Make sure we finish our projects, multiple projects. You need any help, please let me know. Check the Slack channels. I don't see any questions on the group. If you have any questions, put them on the next 3 minutes. Okay, well, I don't see any messages on Slack. I will conclude it with this. All right, peace.